How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Aristil.
Arian.
And also, I'm here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week, or at least what is left of me and Ari after the week we've had is going to attempt to do so. Because it's been a week. It's been a week.
Yeah. we have both been MIA all week.
Yeah, I kind of noticed.
Just get home and die.
But at least I did get enough time to troll Vol, so that's fine. We're good.
And if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com. Or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server, and you can get there by clicking on the link that will be provided in the show description underneath the archive on YouTube.
You know you want to come get arrested for looking at our politics board.
Yeah, that's a hive of wrong-thinking villainy. So, on the stream today, I'm going to be doing something that life basically is wanting me to absolutely not do, and that's I'm playing some Final Fantasy. Just to confuse everything. Yeah, every time I sit down and try to do Final Fantasy, something happens. And
your progress through the MSQ has been glacial.
Yes, it has. Because, yeah, I sit down, I can get maybe half an hour of progress before something happens. And everything just goes to hell. But at least this time...
You're starting to dread hearing your name get called?
Yes. Yes, I am. Or the phone ringing, or something like that. Anywho, so, just to confuse everyone, we are having, in Final Fantasy, the Halloween event.
Yes, and it's pretty fantastic compared to your typical World of Warcraft event.
The same one that they've been recycling for the last 10 years, you mean?
Yeah. Me involved did it with Ibu today. We did the little stuff with it.
I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go and take my AI-controlled minions probably through... Tempt. Yeah, I've actually managed to push the squadron that far now. Start doing. Largely because
I've been very inattentive about them.
Yeah,
I just don't use them.
I had as well because there was really nothing to be gained, honestly, by doing that. But now there's the treasure boxes which have mounts and pets and other cool stuff.
Wow, when they feel like it.
When they feel like it. But I also
Mostly I get usually trash pets that I already have.
Well, yeah, you can sell some of them. But I also found it's a good way to just practice a role or a class that you're not really wanting to go and burden other people with, or just...
Or you can't afford to sit down and commit 20-30 minutes to a group of real players and tell them you'll be AFK for 5-10 minutes randomly, as is happening more and more in my life.
Yes, so it's great for that. I'm not exactly sure where that line of content ends. Does it stop at
60?
Okay, so the vault is the last one?
I don't know if the vault is the last dungeon, but they level cap at 60.
Yeah.
I haven't used it beyond 50, and honestly, a lot of their behaviour has got me traumatized.
Yeah, I've only done Halatali and Tamtara, because honestly, I actually completely forgot that Halatali even existed. But
yeah.
That dungeon, you compare Halatali and you compare Tamtara, and it's completely different because one was done in the 1.0 days and the other was done in the 2.0 days. And pick which.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tamtara is just a bad dungeon. No two ways about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the environment design is nice, especially if you compare it to Totorak.
Oh, if you feel bad about
not
Tamtara,
Totorak.
Yeah,
yeah. Tamtara's later.
Yeah, Totorak gave me
Totorak is brown tunnels and brown tunnels and brown tunnels.
Because they would just stand in the poo and they would never leave.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to get them to behave on the last boss. They just kind of don't.
It's kind of dumb.
I'm going in there as fast enough.
Just going there as a Dark Knight and a tank, so basically I just call the ads over and AoE them until they over. If the AIs decide they're going to actually attack them, then hey.
So much the better.
So much the better. Because unlike the trusts, at least the AIs in Squadron do occasionally AoE. The trusts don't.
The archers in the trusts do an obscene amount of damage.
Yeah, they do. I've got one in my team.
Yeah, I bring double archers to a lot of things because they can basically two-shot mobs.
Yep. But yeah, it's good fun at least. You can just sit back, relax, and do dumb things without anyone really calling, upsetting anyone or. That's a good time, and I'll do a little bit of that later. Now I'm going to do the Halloween events. Yeah. We just had.
You can lose. You can lose. So, well, I don't know what happens if you run out of health. So.
Okay, yeah. I'm not that far along yet. So where am I supposed to be going?
Oh, when you get to the dungeon, know that your health never regenerates.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, and also spoilers, I guess, for the Halloween event. If you're doing it on stream, you're going to be spoiling it.
Yeah, if you don't want to, be spoiled by the Halloween event, either do it along with me or just don't watch the video.
You get to see.
I'm really enjoying a lot of the events that Final Fantasy does. Like a lot of their events, they're very small and they'll only have 1 or 2 rewards out of them, which is usually fine. But it's usually something a bit of a diversion from the norm. Like we just had the Lunar New Year or whatever it was. Oh, what is it? I forget what they've actually called it, but celebrating the Year of the Tiger. So you had this boss fight out in the middle of a field against this illusionary tiger in front of an audience, and it was kind of cool.
I think that the operative thing there is that they don't just recycle the same event year after year after year after year.
Yeah.
Like they regularly will spice it up by adding in new things in. They repeat some events, particularly the crossovers and tie-ins often get repeated so long as they have a continuing relationship with the property in question.
Mm-hmm.
But
I see the Yokai Watch come back because I still got a lot of stuff I got to get.
Yeah, I don't know if that one's going to come back or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Yokai Watch, since they actually had the crossover events, has really just tanked in popularity. It kind of had a big flash in the pan for a while, particularly in Japan, and now it's kind of just faded.
I've never played any of them, so I don't really know.
I quite enjoy them.
I don't really know what it's about.
They're just dumb games, dumb fun Pokemon type games.
Right.
Although the American yokai that they created going into totally not America, a lot of them are really bad, and in some cases kind of borderline offensive if you're an American. So there's that.
It sounds ideal.
It does, actually.
Like, a lot of people find Americans borderline offensive by their very presence, so...
I resemble that remark.
Like, there's a yokai that is a burger, and if it inspirits people, it causes people to become addicted to fast food.
Let me just put this McDonald's burger I got before the show down.
Oh, well, I mean, that's Americans in a nutshell, though, right? America and burgers.
It also paints people who speak with a southern accent as speaking a completely different language.
I know it was a meme on Carl Benjamin's show for a while that American listeners would rate things in X out of 10 burgers.
I mean, Americans will use anything, literally anything, to avoid using the metric system or any sensible unit of measurement.
Oh,
well, you see, the thing is that I don't really like the metric system has its uses, but I resent it generally speaking because of it being French.
Yeah, it does have
the relationship to France offends me, as any
have
relationship of anything
whiff,
to France does.
So,
but I mean, there's a difference between saying a state is so many square miles, which makes sense. No, it's so many Rhode Islands.
We had an order in Europe the other week, and somewhere in Scotland, and they wanted a basing cover, and they sent us the measurement in millimeters.
Yes.
We don't sell basing covers in millimeters. We sell them in inches.
Why though? Millimeters is the standard for manufacturing.
Well, in America it's not. In America it's fractions of an inch.
Yes.
Yeah. I swear at this point, Americans are just doing it to confuse people.
So
I do think it's out of pride, but I can't say I blame them, because once you're used to a particular system, there's not a huge amount of utility in changing it, other than just to do what everybody else does. Although I believe there was a failed space mission once that was caused by a confusion between metric and imperial units.
Yeah, that was...
There was international communication between NASA and some other organization.
One of the
Apollos, and somewhere along the line, the measurements were done. One was in metric and one was in imperial.
Yeah, like NASA's uses the metric as its standard, but somewhere along the line there was someone didn't realize that, I guess.
Probably one of the American contractors.
Yeah.
Well, New Zealand switching to the metric system is relatively recent. So my father grew up using imperial. So while I was raised using metric, my father used imperial measurement for everything. So I'm sort of like familiar with both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
except fluid ounces. I don't understand the
that's just moon
measurements at all.
Oh, don't worry, we don't either.
Nobody understands fluid. Anyway, what were we talking about? Halloween event.
Yokai Watch. How much we hate the French.
Yokai Watch, the French. Anywho,
so yeah, the events. They do make a comeback when they are to do with a crossover property, but the seasonal ones, there's usually a new iteration every year, and there's usually limited cosmetic gear, which will go up on the store eventually, but it will be usually the cheaper stuff on the store. So if you really, really want something, you can still go and get it for usually a pretty token fee compared to other things. Like, for instance,
like
some of the more demand articles in demand, some of which I've been looking at for doing some glamours, are quite expensive, but the seasonal ones tend to be very cheap, and because there's a lot of very popular ones that people want, like the Songbird outfit particularly.
Yeah, the New Year's Kabutos people tend to like, because a lot of them are just ridiculous, especially the horse one.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do the nearest thing to wearing that horse head.
Yeah, there you go.
Horse head. Yeah.
It's the horse head by way of a samurai. But, yeah, I can't actually wear that. I got the two tiger Kabutos, and I can't wear them because Barakat.
Yeah, well, they'll fix it eventually.
They'll get to it. It's not a deal breaker. It's just, I really want to wear some incredibly fancy hats, and I can't.
I'm sort of curious as to how that happened, though, because it's not like it's an unforeseeable outcome that, you just don't do the hat rigging for this race, then it's going to make people unhappy because they can't wear hats. Like that, it seems like a very obvious problem, and I wonder what the circumstances were that caused it to go down like that.
Yeah, was something rushed, or was there a miscommunication? I don't know, but yeah. It may have just been a feature that had to be cut time.
Yeah, although, I mean, I wish they could wear hats myself, or rather fully enclosed helmets, because I don't like Barakat moustache.
Yeah, Barakat moustache looks awful. Like, I can see what they're going for with it, it just looks bad.
Yeah, presumably it's meant to be a riff on the Coil's tentacles.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
But it just looks gross. It looks gross.
Those aren't whiskers. That's skin. That's your face. What do you? Yeah. Yeah. Some of the events I really like, especially the anniversary event. You get that little private message from Yoshi P breaking the fourth wall, and he does a unique little message.
Exists a universe.
Well, sort of.
He just it's all totally. I do not regard it as fourth wall breaking. I think that he's actually in universe.
In his own little pocket dimension.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one where you could visit the writer's room or whatever?
Yeah, you walk around and talk to all the staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you've got the Christmas event where Socken is allowed to get incredibly drunk, I guess. You've got two versions you can actually get. If you play the minigame correctly, you get the good Christmas Carol. If you play it badly, you get the horrendously off-key monstrosity.
I missed that event. I'm a bit disappointed.
I haven't heard this year's and just how bad it is.
There wasn't this year's event.
They didn't do it this year?
No, they had a different event that involved making treats for Yetis or something.
Oh, right.
Oh, that was cute. You had the two Yeti family members show up.
Clown! So yeah.
Are you suffering trauma?
This clown looks like he's eaten someone. What on earth is going on here?
Well, that's what clowns do, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But they're not supposed to look like that. Well, I suppose he is a Halloween clown. How smooth brain do I want to make the... Just come out and call him dodgy. Yeah, let's just do that. So, yeah, anywho, so yeah, actually going to play a little bit for a change. So, as for weeks, I haven't done a whole nerdery this week, but it hasn't been too. The only big bit of nerdery really this week I did was actually sit down and decide to watch a new long-running anime. And the one I settled on was Gintama. I have no idea what is going on in this anime. And I love it. So, have you guys, either of you guys watched it yet? Uh-oh. I lost you. I have lost them. Wait.
Did you
Hello?
mute us?
Ah, there they are.
Yeah, did you mute Discord? We can hear you fine.
Yeah, we were hearing you fine and in real time as well, without any distortion.
That's kind of weird. I think Discord just had a moment there. That's...
Your sound card did.
Nobody uses sound cards anymore.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Your audio drivers.
But I just tabbed back to Discord and now it's working again. Okay.
I was a little bit confused, yes.
There it goes. Okay, is it? I think it's working properly now.
Is it?
Yep, it's working.
No idea.
I don't know what
I
happened.
thought it was a bit strange that I said, "Oh, I've never seen a single episode," and then you immediately asked if I'd seen an episode.
Yeah.
So
okay, so you haven't seen it, and I take it, Ari, you haven't seen it either?
I've seen on and off occasional episodes, but I never sat down and watched it.
Okay. The whole story, at least in the early episodes, is Earth has been invaded and basically taken over by aliens within during some time during the era of samurai in Japan. So you've got traditional old school Japanese, samurai and architecture and things like that. And then next door you have a super high-tech skyscraper and everything's kind of mashed together. But in among all that, you have a group of 3 idiots who are basically a odd jobs agency. You have Gin, who's the main character, who's your big samurai, and the 2 hangers-on. The whole thing is just slapstick comedy pretty much the entire way through. Every time it tries to take a serious moment to say, like, the age of samurai is dead, or we want to take Earth back, la 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 la. No, then somebody has to go flying out a window while juggling a bomb and screaming about some guy called Adrian. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's incredibly silly. But it is also something like 300 episodes? I need to look this up, actually.
It's a lot. It's another long runner.
Yeah. I mean, I did One Piece. If I did One Piece, I can do anything.
I couldn't do One Piece.
It took me a year to do One Piece.
I ran out of steam. Like, I binged a whole bunch of the early part of it, and then I think where did I ran out of gas shortly after Ace's execution, I think.
Yep.
Ran out of gas way before that.
Yeah, right before that you had the whatever it was, the Sky Island arc, which was just bad. Let me see. My anime list says it has only 51 episodes. Okay.
For that, the Gintama is broken up into different series.
Yeah.
So I know it has more than 51 episodes.
Yeah,
I'm going so long, it must
yeah. Okay, hang on. Yeah, My Anime List is doing some weird things. That's only season 2. So only season 2 has 50 episodes. I think they're well over about 250.
Crunchyroll is licensed up to 201 at the last update from Wikipedia.
There you go.
I don't know when they last updated it.
The clown's gotten closer.
I'm doing math.
Yeah.
There are 367 episodes.
There you go.
A lot of episodes.
There's a lot of episodes. I'm up to date on One Piece now. It's actually kind of cool. They finally crossed the 1000th episode in the anime as well as the manga. To go with it,
Have they found the treasure yet?
No, not yet. They're still fighting in Totally Not Japan. They've been there for like 200 episodes now.
I think I stopped reading the manga at what was happening at the time. I think that there's like a girl with 3 eyes or something, and Sanji's gonna get married or something.
Yeah, the whole cake arc.
Yeah, I ran out of gas on the manga there.
Yeah, that arc kind of goes strange places.
Well, it also dragged.
It does. It drags. The 1-0 arc, like, it's very long, and it's the current arc. It's longer than any other arc. Actually, it's longer than a bunch of the previous arcs put together. And it's still going. But at least it always feels like something's happening. The whole cake arc, it was like, here's some angst, and here's Sanji angsting and just not telling people things that would solve problems in like 5 minutes. But,
his family seems to kind of suck.
His family does indeed suck. And then it introduces Big Mum, who is like one of the big bads of the world, and she's a very strange thing.
Are those pirate emperors actually the big bads of the world? Because the vibe that the story gave me was it was actually the government was the big bads of the world.
Yeah, it is.
And the pirates are just pirates, and they happen to work for the government sometimes.
Yeah, that's all thrown out the window in the 1-0 arc, or just before the 1-0 arc. Abolish that whole system. There's like, it's as far as shonen goes, there's a whole big complicated underlying thing going on between like the government and the world stage and things like that. It's like, yeah, okay, you got Luffy running around just wanting to be the pirate king and find the treasure, and you've got all these other people politicking around him, and he doesn't care, he just barges straight on through.
Well, that's generous. Normally he does that at the last minute because he spent the entire rest of the arc lost.
Well, yeah, he gets better at that.
Does Zoro get better at that?
No. If anything, Zoro's defensive direction gets worse.
Well, he loses his depth perception, so...
He does that. Anyway, one thing was really cool is the 1000th episode. They redid the original intro, except they just updated it with the current cast and the current villains.
Including localization music?
Thankfully, no. Why? I'm still like not sure what they were thinking when they made that 4Kids song. Just oh, it's bad. I mean, at least the Digimon one, yeah, okay, that was bad, but at least it was recognizable and catchy. Annoyingly catchy.
Digimons are the champions.
Creepy clowns again? Is this another creepy clown? Probably. Oh, wait, hang on. They're called the Gruffs. And they're under a bridge. Hang on a second. I see what they're doing.
Well, actually, that's as far as it goes.
Oh. Okay.
there's no other deeper meaning to it, other than lol.
Okay. That's probably just as well. I was half expecting them to evolve into goat puns. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically been my week, really, is Yeah, sit down and watch Gintoki. I've only watched about Gintama. His name is Gintoki. I only watched about 5 or 6 episodes. I haven't gotten that far on it.
Does it have tournament arcs?
Probably. I mean, you've got this whole thing of the armed police running around, and every time they turn up, things just become immensely worse when they're trying to kill each other as much as they're trying to kill the bad guys. I'm going to see where this is going. A lot of people really do like this series. It's a very popular series. But yeah, we'll see. Something silly. Beyond that, I done nothing.
You done nothing?
I done nothing. The clown's back.
Nothing. There's always clown.
There's always clowns, and someone at Square Enix has gone out of their way to make this guy just creepy as all get out. Why are you so sketch? Oh wait, clown. Vol,
I
what
never
have you been up
found
to?
clowns creepy ever.
I've never found them funny. I haven't found them terrifying, but I've found them annoying and weird.
No, I've always found them creepy. Like it's I don't know. It feels like it's something. I didn't have any of this what would you say pop culture associations that made them creepy to me. But I remember I've always felt like they were creepy. And it was some, while it's sort of like a visceral feeling, so it's difficult to explain. It was some combination of the fact that you're supposed to look upon them favorably, even though they haven't done anything to earn it, and they are sort of lying to you because their behavior and their appearance is all a farce.
Yep.
And you're supposed to pretend that you don't notice.
Yeah, add to that in, they turn up in very sketchy places, like the traditional circus is always a very large, kind of ratty and dirty tent, with the creepiest of all instruments playing, calliope.
My grandfather was a clown before he got an engineering job.
Okay, that's a bit of a career change.
He got his engineering degree and until he decided to start his own business. He worked as a clown for the Shriners.
Oh dear.
And would
Like, if it wasn't, if being a clown wasn't bad enough, you had to be a clown in the name of a secret society with nefarious globalist ambitions.
Oh, it's worse than that. He was potentate of the Atlanta branch.
Oh boy.
He was basically the American Klaus Schwab.
I have since removed all association with the Shriners from our company.
I would hope so.
You should probably get an exorcism done as well.
Just to be on the safe side.
Trying to clown,
I mean, yeah.
I mean, if Granddaddy comes back as a crazy ghost, maybe he can help me fix some of the opossum's problems.
No. Alright, there was one other little thing I did. I actually did progress in the story of Final Fantasy a little bit. I've progressed through most of the moon, or at least a good portion of the moon.
I think our barrier for spoilers is just going to be wherever you're at this point.
I think at this point, yeah. I'm moving at an acceptable rate for the spoiler barrier. So, yeah, did the big boss fight there. I went into that blind. That was a bad idea.
You can just say it's Zodiac.
It's Zodiac. It's probably the first time. I expect him to turn up again because, Final Fantasy, but...
You fight him at level 83.
Yeah.
Did you die to the 90-degree rotations?
The first one, yes. I didn't know what was exactly going on, so I got annihilated by something there. But once I figured that out, it wasn't.
It's sort of an archetypal Final Fantasy 14 fight in that everything is about sort of like spatial awareness and spatial cognition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if you can rotate the stage in your head, there's not going to be any mechanic in Final Fantasy that's beyond you.
Yeah, as long as you notice the signs telling you that the stage is going to rotate. first one I actually missed that sign. Yeah. So that was a surprise when I was standing where I thought I'd be safe, even though everyone else had already run away. I had a smooth brain moment and didn't run with them fast enough.
Following the blob in that fight is dangerous.
Yeah, because sometimes the blob will go somewhere dangerous as well and get smushed.
Because the blob has... I have very poor ability to transform geometry in my head, but the blob has no ability to transform geometry in their head, is my experience in that fight.
Well, yeah. the blob is basically as good at it as the person at the front of the blob.
Yes.
Like, whoever was the first person to move, although oftentimes there's not a first person to move, it's sort of like, you know that Ouija board suggestion?
Yeah.
Where everybody thinks that they can feel the thing moving. I mean, I wouldn't use one because that's occult stuff. But what I've heard is that the phenomenon is everybody thinks they can feel it moving, and collectively they will agree on a direction on a sort of subconscious level. And I think that the blob moves like that. Like, everybody thinks they are seeing a blob coalesce and move in a particular direction, and so to a greater or lesser extent, it moves by consensus.
Yeah, and that's what it essentially is. It's movement by consensus. So if enough people know how the mechanic works, the blob will go that way.
You see, everybody in the group thinks that they're following somebody else, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
If you do that fight gear appropriate for its level, it's a long fight too. I did that fight pretty early in the expansion, only a day or two behind the blob, and nobody in my group knew what they were doing.
Oh dear!
So we all had to figure the fight out in real time, and it was just 8 idiots, all of us, fully aware that we're dumb. Trying to figure out this fight.
That fight is exceptionally well signposted, though.
Yeah, it is. Except it took us... The thing that took us a while to figure out was the stars in the sky, and that they closed down like a book cover closing on top of you. We had half the group that just kept reading them wrong and kept dying, and unfortunately both of our healers were in that group that kept dying, and so nobody could res anybody.
Whoops. Yeah, as I only died twice. The first time was because I was figuring out how the room rotation mechanic, and once you get that down, that's no. The other time, I think I just got knocked off the platform because of the lag, the Australia penalty.
Oh, yeah. when he goes to the corner and punches?
Yeah.
I think I died twice as well. The first time was because I tried to share a non-shared tank buster. And the second time was falling off due to something.
Yeah.
That punch is really tight. You have to be moving before he gets and the telegraph appears.
He's as bad as Titan. You got to really be ahead of him.
You have to keep your eyeball on Zodiark and see when he's going to the corner and be moving to the opposite corner.
Yeah. But aside from a few gripes and my own stupidity, that's still a very good fight.
Yeah, I like that fight a lot.
Especially you got the soundtrack carrying on. You've got Van Daniel going absolutely bonkers throughout the whole thing.
That's normal for him.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Way better than the Heidelin Thingamabob. That, there's a thing that, when you're going to talk to Heidelin that you have to do later.
Okay.
And, it's done with the trust by everybody for this little story event.
It's done except for the one guy.
Yeah, unless you're the one guy, because you can queue for this thing in the duty finder.
But nobody does except this one guy
who drags us into it, and now me, Abo, and Vol are paranoid.
Along with the rest of the group.
Yeah, we are paranoid about going into trial roulette with level 88 plus because we'll get warped into that particular thingamabob.
Yeah, it's just late in the story trial that you have to, because there's always, there's a couple of trials in every story. But the late one is like the story very, very, very much hints you should use the trust system.
Yeah, it's the only.
So most people instinctively do. I mean, the every dungeon does more or less, and except for Zodiac, because your buddies aren't around. Every dungeon in the game hints that, oh well, there is the story experience you can have by using the trust instead for your first time, right? Well, that's what most people instinctively do.
Yeah, and it's what
And
I
the
recommend you do too.
The same applies to the second trial, because Ari's already spoiled it. Your trust buddies are available. But
I
sometimes some people are like, how about I just queue in the duty finder instead, and suddenly everybody is involved in this fight that they can only sort of kind of maybe remember. Because they did it with a team of people who do all the mechanics perfectly because they trust.
Yeah, it's a special trial in that you can take a full trust into a trial.
Yeah.
Instead of just a dungeon, because it's special in a lot of ways. But this also means you don't learn any of the stuff that actually happens because you just follow the trust around.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that.
It's just much easier to follow your party members than to try and work out all the mechanics from scratch by yourself.
Yeah.
But so it's sort of like the one blob in the world that actually does all the mechanics correctly is available to you to guide you through the process if that's the way you want to go. Not that you still don't have to stay on your toes while playing it. It's just that having the trust there for your first time makes it much easier. The problem is that means you won't usually get that that trial when you're doing roulettes, because most people will use the trust. And it's like with most trial roulettes, you get it when there's like one person who needs it still and doing it for story. That's the reason you get trial roulette.
Yeah.
Except that the one guy that queues up for the second major story trial is going to give everybody else a bad time.
Yeah, so you're gonna wind up with 8 people that have no clue what they're doing. And
I kept doing mechanics backwards because I kept remembering things to the inverse of what they were.
Oh,
like, I got all of the things correct, just in the wrong order, upside down.
All right. Yeah, I won't burden people with that. If I'm given the option to use a trust for the first run, I will.
Yeah, it's special in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it makes sense for the story as well. Like it's sort of as one of those situations of which there are quite a few in the game where it doesn't really make sense for a bunch of random strangers to show up. Like in Shadowbringers, they invent that mechanic which allows the inheritor of the seat of Azim has a history of involving her buddies and things, but in a lot of scenarios it still just doesn't make much sense that and also this group of strangers with the Warrior of Light.
It's suddenly you're fighting you're stuck in another dimension and you're fighting a primal in the middle of nowhere, but somehow all these other adventurers are here.
They just kind of hanging out.
At least they've actually they've written a story explanation into it now. You know,
but yeah, I mean that yeah, but it's still, you can tell that it's sort of it's a Deus Ex Machina of sorts.
Yeah, and it's not retroactive either.
Yeah, but the way every dungeon occurs, it's pretty obvious. Oh, these are the people around you at the time, so there's the scenario version, and you queue for that with your Scion buddies, and then you participate in the story event. But
almost spoiled more of that than I meant to, and had to swerve that car hard.
Okay, I'm about to do the seasonal event, which is apparently a four-person thing.
It's just 3 mini games.
Oh, this is going to be a disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, you have 2 action buttons, and that's it.
Right.
And you do a 20-minute dungeon with it. That's all mini games.
All right. Well, this is going to be a disaster.
Don't get hit. You can't heal.
There
is no healing.
Well, I don't know that you actually die if you lose all your health. Maybe you just get knocked down and out until the end of the trial, or maybe you just go down for 30 seconds and can stand up again, or I don't know.
That is a tiny elephant. Cone. Okay. Yeah. All right. Guess I'm leading.
You know where you're going? Use
Nope.
the map. You need to.
That's okay. I'll just follow Bunny Alphino. It's fine.
Typically, you want to visit every side room at least once.
Yeah, if you get all 30 of the dudes and rescue them, you get 6 pumpkin cookies.
Tokeny things.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Are we in? Oh yeah, we are.
You're back in Temtara.
Back in Temtara. All right. So anyway, yeah, Vol, what have you done for your week?
Nothing.
We
The
transitioned.
manager was away this week,
Eh.
so I had to suffer catching all of the shit rolling downhill. So yeah, it was a rough week for me with a lot of late nights, a lot of paperwork, and a lot of me just arriving at home and feeling like I was already dead. I didn't log into Final Fantasy all week. Not for lack of trying, but I just didn't have the energy to spare by the time the evening rolled around. It was rough. I did play a little bit of FGO, because it requires a minimum of energy. The event, the Amazons event, is the exact opposite sort of event that I wanted to be doing in my current state, because each mission only costs 1 AP. You're not going to deplete your AP by doing this event. It's not going to happen. The problem is that it requires a huge amount of time, which is something that I don't have, and also a certain amount of brain power, because as I mentioned last week, it has the cooldown mechanic. Your servants go on cooldown for like 6 hours or something each time you use them. So you've got to put together really efficient teams comprised of your trash servants to save your good ones for boss floors. But honestly, it turned out not to be that onerous, because it takes so long to get through all those floors, because you've got to spend time thinking about what is an efficient team to use, and so on. So you end up spending a lot of like real world physical time, and that ends up being what's occupying you, which is not really what I wanted to be doing, since I don't have that much free time, because I keep getting home late, and it's like, oh, I want to advance this event, except I've got to go through X number of floors of this, attempting to have the likes of Roma and Castagi, and all of the weirdos and misfits like Phantom of the Opera that you wouldn't use under normal circumstances.
Do the D list.
Yeah, it's very much like, here's your opportunity to see all your D-listers noble phantasms that you've never seen before because you don't use them. But yeah, it's a servant verse story, so it's as daft as you would expect. There, I think there's 200 floors or 250 floors in total. Let's see. There's 100 floors that are story, from what I gather. I'm up to about floor 90-ish or so through what time I've had. Yeah, it looks like there's 200, and then there's raids as well along the way, after this main story is cleared. But yeah, it's and the raids also require you to exhaust your team, so you have to put together, to complete the raid, multiple different sort of A teams to fight your way through them. But I haven't gotten up to that yet anyway. But yeah, it's a servant-verse story, so it's incredibly silly. And I'm not sure what else to say about it, because being a servant-verse story, it's pretty much not really any way that I can relate anything coherent that will be in any way revelatory. But that's been more or less it. I also did watch the Solomon movie, but since Ari has mentioned like 5 times that he's watched it, I will let him talk about that in his week.
Have I mentioned it like 5 times?
Yeah, you have. I don't know if I was just always happened to be in earshot when you were telling somebody else, but you have mentioned it an awful lot of times. I was like, man, is he really excited about this or something?
No. It's the exact.
I didn't think it was that great.
No, it's about to say it's the exact opposite impression.
But yeah, I don't know that I've done anything else because I've just been so exhausted, burning the candle at both ends all week, and I don't really have any gas left in the tank at this point. I've taken a 3-day weekend this week, because I can't face another 5-day week at this point. It's been too exhausting. Like, I'm working, well over 50-hour weeks at this point, trying to keep the car in the road at work because there's just nobody to do the paperwork. There's nobody to take responsibility for all the decisions. Like, I know in a sense, like, the argument would be made that, oh, well, the reason why you're not paid a very good salary is because you ultimately, the buck doesn't stop with you. You don't have to take responsibility. The responsibility will rest with the manager for any decisions made. Well, that's true, but I still have to make the decisions, and my professional pride will not allow me to make wrong ones. So I still experience all that pressure in practical terms, even if in like de jure terms, that it's not really my problem to worry about it. So yeah, I'm extremely tired due to this sort of unplanned additional work, and we're down a KTP due to one having left. So essentially, I'm doing 3 people's jobs plus my work is like already enough to fill more than an 8-hour day every day.
Ish.
And I feel like death. It's not great, but the lab manager should be back, I think, from holiday today, and resuming his duties, I certainly hope. And I have left him a tidy backlog of all the paperwork that I couldn't do because I was busy doing all of the other work. So I hope he enjoys that. But yeah, so over this coming week, I'm hoping that I will have a bit of time to play some Final Fantasy. I'm gradually advancing my scholar in levels. I'm finding, like I mentioned last week, I'm finding it much more intuitive to play than White Mage, although it's sort of hard to get a grasp on why. I think that in a lot of ways, the Joe Cat video kind of captures it in a sense about the White Mage. That is to say, the White Mage is just a fire hose of green numbers.
Yep.
And it's sort of it's not very clearly delineated what you should do with that fire hose. So you just point it wherever seems good at the time. And that is not, like, the Astrologian doesn't have this problem because the Astrologian has a fleshed out side mechanic, as it were.
Yep.
Through which their effectiveness as a class or as a job is able to be channeled. So you can have Ari standing off the side. There's nobody in urgent need of saving from imminent death right now, so he can play Yu-Gi-Oh while everybody else does work.
Until we get dead ends again, and the second boss hits everybody with stuff, or warm glow happens, and I'm frantically have to drop the Yu-Gi-Oh cards and keep spamming Helios and forget about the Yu-Gi-Oh game and let my stacks overcap.
But the reality is they do have this separate mechanic, which is another thing that they can do. The White Mage really doesn't. The side mechanic is sort of supposed to be blood for the Blood Lily, but that's just pushing DPS, so that's just another type of number hose. Ultimately, when it comes to doing your healing job as a White Mage, your only tools really that you have in your toolbox are medium-sized big number, really big number, really fast big number, area big number, ticking big number. Like, all you can do is fill up empty bars with numbers, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it makes the class very simple to operate. However, making a distinction between operating it well and operating it poorly is not intuitive at all, because it's hard to see your inefficiency a lot of the time. Unless you are actually causing your group to wipe due to your poor play, your inefficiencies are hard to sense. So you never really get a strong feeling that you're playing well or poorly. in the case of the scholar, I'm finding that there are the tools have obvious purposes. Like there are tools that they cause, say for instance, there's a tool that will, let's say this in the simplest case, is a tool that applies a very, very modest heal, and a slightly larger than that heal shield. So there are right and wrong ways to use that, right? You don't really want to waste the heal component if they've got full health, and that shield is going to buy you time in which you can slot another thing. If they don't have a shield, you're not going to want to drop a pure heal from Lustrate on them or something like that, because you're just you're wasting the healing potential and the time buying potential that you would gain from a shield. Because I mean, if you drop the shield on them instead, then you've got time to let your fairy fill in some of the gaps while you make your next decision and so on. Like there are things that clearly lend themselves to a particular role, and you've got other things like, oh well, when the target's health crosses this particular threshold, it will trigger another type of heal, and oh, you've got this other thing which is going to cause your fairy to tunnel vision on particular individuals, but they'll stop moving and get left behind if the fight is highly mobile. And so all of the tools have very particular jobs, whereas all of the white mage tools by and large have magnitudes. So the white mage seems like something that responds really well to sort of autistic numbers management optimization, whereas the scholar seems more responsive to playstyle decisions.
Yep.
And I find that easier to work with. But I do like the both of them, and I think that my overall decision to lean into scholar a bit more recently has to do with the fact that I can't get over the fact that white mage, in the context that it has been portrayed in FF14, contra, say, some of other previous FF white mage depictions, is you're just a tree hugger. Like, that's your shtick. You're a filthy, unwashed hippie. That's the job description, and that bothers me. It does. I don't know why. Plus, the scholar's class story, was actually surprisingly interesting. I know it's been a while since I've done one, but I did not know anything about it going in. I've been doing the class quests entirely blind, and I was sort of quite intrigued to see that, oh, there's actually this whole story behind Tonberries. They're not just, generic FF enemy that's been included because they're always in FF and that's just a thing you do. Because I mean, that's why chocobos are in the game, right? Because it's FF, and so you've got to have chocobos. And that's why cactuars are in the game, because it's FF and you've got to have cactuars. And I'd always classified Tonberries as one of those things, like cactuars, that they've just got to be there. But no, they're actually a whole thing. There's a whole story behind, well, this is where Tonberries come from, this is why they're there, and this is why they're in this particular geographical location, and this is how they tie into the lore of the rest of the history of Eorzea and the world in which Eorzea sits. And I thought that was really, really cool, because most of the stories don't actually run that deep as far as their involvement in the world at large. But yeah, I thought that was quite cool. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I don't, unfortunately, have much more to talk about, because it's just been a rough week. I hope I can watch some of the new season's anime, but I say that from the point of view of not knowing yet what this season's anime are, and that hope is likely to wither in record time if it turns out to be like last season again.
I'll save you some time. Something isekai.
Ugh. But that was the same thing last time.
Yep.
And the time before
that. And the time before that.
And the time before that.
Oops.
I could always just watch FGO Babylonia again, because the action scenes and set pieces are great, and my second half of the series has arrived in Blu-ray form. Although it, like the first one, did come by Ozpost, and the box looked physically like it had been used as a football.
Yeah.
Why? That's not what packages are for. Although, I guess freight people have other opinions on the matter. But
strange idea.
Yeah, so So that's 3/4 of my my order of my last order of Blu-ray have managed to finally show up, with the fourth part being the third Heaven's Feel movie. At which point I'll be able to watch all three back to back. But yeah, still waiting on that one. Not sure where it is or how long I need to wait. Maybe it's not out yet. I just ordered it as soon as it became available for order. It's not like pre-ordering other things. I've already seen the movie. I know how good it is. But yeah, so yeah, I don't want to hold out much hope for this season's anime, but I guess I don't really have much of a choice. I could have continued watching Demon Slayer though, as they've gone into their current arc, and I'm sort of like tangentially, like very, very tangentially, like I can see as of a great distance some of the contortions that appear to be taking place in the fandom, and it has reinforced to me that fandoms with a capital F are cancer.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be involved in them ever, because they're horrible and they're full of horrible people.
I've been completely blind to what the Demon Slayer fandom's been squawking about.
They're basically caught in this constant loop of accusing each other of being pedophiles.
Well then.
And objecting to basically everything. There's nothing that's not objectionable to them, because they're fandom people that spend all their time online being upset about things. Because I think that's what fandoms are about, being upset about things. The latest thing that they've been upset about is that in a recent fight scene, Nezuko wakes up to find her brother has been beaten to a pulp, and basically hulks out. But part of her hulking out is that she basically grows into an adult temporarily in order to fight, because she needs a superior frame to do it. And so she uses her crazy demon powers to do that. Of course, this enhances others of her assets as well than just her height.
Oh, that's what that is. So I've seen some spillover from this, and there's people complaining that Nezuko is hot.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
They object to the idea that she had a hot adult body. They fundamentally object to it.
Why though?
Because they are people who live on the internet and spend literally all their free time looking for things to object to and be upset about.
You got to remember with these terminally online folks too, most of them either are women and therefore don't know how men think, or have never seen a woman and therefore don't know how their bodies will react when they see a woman. So, people of the terminally online crowd, I'm here to tell you something. Men are visual creatures. If they see boobies, they like that, and they don't put any more thought into it.
Well, you say terminally online people, but the thing is that ethos understand this as well.
Well, yeah, but they're exploiting the system because they're aware of it. The normally terminally online people, the normies, fall into the other camp.
The ethos have cracked the incredibly complicated code that mankind has devised, and specifically malekind has devised, which is boobies are attractive. I know it's deep arcane secrets, but some people have finally realized.
Like this is as far as boy-girl attraction on the boys' end goes. It doesn't have any deeper meaning. There is no great unraveling here.
Yeah, there's nothing symbolic about this. It's not a dog whistle and it's not a code.
It's just boys like boobies.
They're not secretly hinting at something psychological.
The deepest you can take this conversation, and the deepest you will see any men in the locker room take this conversation, is a debate whether booties or boobie is better.
Unfortunately, the understanding of these simple male concepts that have existed since the dawn of maledom in humanity seem to evaporate on the consumption of too much soy and too much internet.
Yeah. I genuinely don't understand the men on the internet that fall into this terminally online camp and don't understand how their own triggers work, because 99.9 repeating % of men have this reaction, and that's as far as it goes.
I guess there's there's basically there's three classes of people, right? There's people who give themselves entirely over to their impulses. There's people who learn to control these impulses, and there are people who don't really do either of them and go into this bizarre denial, which doesn't do anything to help them manage their baser instincts, but also results in them denying their base nature entirely at the same time. So they end up being, the male feminist, the inevitable sexual predator in any situation.
Yeah, it's I break it down into two groups. That's doesn't put as much thought into it. It's those that are aware of how their brain works, and those that are not aware of how their brain work.
I mean, how many of the male feminists that were involved in denouncing Gamergate have been arrested now? I mean, it might be easier to count how many haven't.
Well, they did Joss Whedon over the last week.
Yeah, I saw something about that. I saw something on the periphery about that, about how his position as a male feminist is sort of under threat because of his own skeevy behaviour.
Yeah, because, hey, it turns out he's just as big a scumbag as the people he's been decrying.
I think he's bigger scumbag because the people he decries typically aren't lying about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're engaged in an act of deception to say that they are something other than they are, and what they are people who are unable to control their impulses. Like your typical man whore is not. He may be unable to control his impulses, but he's not pretending that he can control them.
Yeah. Dragging it back to Demon Slayer, though. I think I'm being spoiled by Demon Slayer and Ufotable in general, and that
it's making other shonen look shit. It's not. I mean, it's not like the story is especially anything to write home about, but it's just so lavishly produced.
But anytime Pro Tycoon busts out the Hinokami Kagura, it just looks so good with the way they animate it, plus the music they pick for it.
Yeah, they've done too good of a job. They really have. It just makes me indulge in these sort of like pointless what if fantasies. What if this anime, recalled in my imagination, let's say, had been done by Ufotable? What would it have looked like? What would it have sounded like? Like something like, say, a shonen that I've got a lot of long running fondness for, like Bleach. Can you imagine a Bleach that was done by Ufotable?
Limited budget. And there isn't the budget for that.
Yeah, because I mean, everything that took place in Bleach was an over the top spectacle of extreme proportions. That was just how that series rolled. There was nothing subtle about it. Like even its competitors, like Naruto, and that would occasionally do things that were done subtly once in a while. But and honestly, all of the combat, while it takes place on an incredibly violent scale in terms of power being thrown around in something like Demon Slayer, ultimately it's swords clashing, typically, type of thing. Whereas what the concept of swords clashing entails in Bleach is something entirely different. And yes, swords were involved at one point, but they may or may not evidently be swords at this point. But yeah, it's just they do such an unspeakably good job at spectacle and production that it's hard not to wish they could do everything.
Yeah, it's also because I'm so used to when I go into it now. I'm going to Ufotable production. I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. It's starting to lose a bit of the punch, and that's worrying to me. Because sometimes they have really great, really just standout moments that still catch me still. But the normal Ufotable animation, when they're not busting out all the stops, I'm like, oh yeah, this is better than everything else out there. But it's still not as good as what they could do. And I know I'm being spoiled by them. And that's the whole reason I start to dip into that.
I can't say I'm having that problem because, for me, I watch so much garbage as well. I watch so many trash anime as well that going back to Ufotable after watching something like In Another World with my smartphone or something like that is like being permitted to breathe again.
Yeah.
Like, if you only watch the good stuff, of course you're going to become blasé about it.
Yeah.
What did you say, Finn?
I still can't believe you actually watched.
Well, I mean, it was just so on the nose that I felt like I couldn't not watch it.
Yeah, I guess.
Like, how can they be this brazen? How can they be this shallow? Oh, that's how.
Yeah, that's how.
Fern probably watches more normal anime than I do now, because I had to.
If you
take
by the numbers shonen fluff as normal anime.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trash. I like shonen.
Yeah, I don't. There seems to be some kind of strange theory that either all anime is shonen, or that if you like anime, you have to like shonen, or that you can't like shonen for the lowbrow crap that it is.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's perfectly legitimate to like shonen for being lowbrow crap. So what if it's produced cheaply and has trash pacing and is generally garbage? It's not high art, and nobody actually thinks that it is.
No, it's just some
like with all
dumb spectacle to sit down and watch.
Yeah, like with all entertainment, there is a mood your brain can get into, and if shonen's what you want right then, sometimes it's just okay to watch shonen, and that's what you want right then, and that's what you're gonna do.
Yep.
It's like sometimes I want to play a big story-driven JRPG, and sometimes I just want to play something like Dark Souls where I can put on the audiobook in the background.
Sometimes I want to eat healthy, other times I want a gigantic bowl of chocolate pudding. Don't eat too much chocolate pudding. That's bad.
Oh, I can't eat chocolate pudding. There's certain types of chocolate pudding I can't eat anymore. My flatmate used to prepare self-sourcing chocolate pudding, which was quite delicious. The problem was it was the last food that I consumed before I was stricken with the worst bout of gastroenteritis have had in my entire life.
Oh yeah, that would do it.
And so every time I smell it, it just reminds me of that week of pure agony.
Yep.
And so, despite the fact that it was delicious, it's been completely covered up by this other associated memory now.
Memory is stupid, like.
Oh my.
We should probably actually be taking a break.
All right.
All you're watching me do on stream is freaking Totorak, so you're not missing much there, at least.
Oh, there's the mini games there. All right, when we get back, we'll do the mergy bits of Mine Involves Week, and then I'll clean up with my week, and we'll go on to the email and the news. Here's some music. We'll be right back. And we're back.
Hills, just in time for the incredibly disappointing first boss of. I really hate it.
Yeah. Whenever I'm leveling my low-level characters, I seem to get it all the time.
Yeah.
I intentionally sat down and got all of my characters through the Totorak level range where it was optimal at once. So now everything is above Totorak level.
So you don't ever have to do it again.
I did the exact same thing for the exact same reason.
Yeah.
Just couldn't hack it. No more. No more.
Just stop, please.
Yeah. And then afterwards took them all to level 30 just to get the job crystals.
So yeah, this is the first boss. It's nothing.
Hey, it's got a poison you gotta dispel sometimes. And you don't have to, but I mean...
You don't have to. You can. I didn't even need to hit any of my damage mitigation. Pleasure.
It's desynth. So yeah, we were at the end of All's Week.
Yeah, I don't have much else to talk about. NFF still continuing to work on my relic weapons because it's basically an infinite wellspring of low intellectual requirement grind.
Yeah. Alrighty then. What did we do together in FF this week? Nothing really.
No, we just did the regular stuff, and nothing even happened that was especially clownish.
Yeah, it was all kind of just routine stuff this week. We do have a year-long weekend where we might do stuff, but right now we have been too tired to get on and do anything all week, so we haven't done anything.
It makes me worry that I'm getting prematurely old. That's like, I didn't do anything because I felt too tired. It sounds like old person talking.
Yeah. So... Oh my goodness. So, I also didn't do much in Final Fantasy all week other than the stuff we did together. I started Abo on Boja, just got him in there and explained what I understood about the place, which honestly, is not very much. So it was a quick little hour and a half I spent in there with him. But in that hour and a half, I got like a level on my monk. So
yeah, it's still optimal for leveling in that level range. If you just want to power through the 70 to 80 range, Bosja's the way to go. Well, 71. I think you've got to be 71 to start. But it's by far the optimal. And there's probably, I don't know, I haven't been there in a while, but I expect there's still got a reasonable population due to that fact.
Probably.
It's got a goodly amount of people in it. It was enough to almost fill up every boss fight. And we did it pretty late in our time zone too. It was a long day, and I got home at after 7 and went and didn't get on until about midnight. And that's what the population was like around midnight my time, which is when the populations really start to dip on the servers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm still up to Castrum Lacus Latore there, so I don't know whether or not they've got enough people to fill that out or what.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like at the higher brackets, or if the people in there are just leveling and not worrying about relic weapons or how it's going there.
Well, I presume it's probably got a hefty EXP bonus if you can do it. I hope it does, because I want people to still be doing it so that I can clear that eventually. I worry that I ought to be rushing for it while there is still a population, but I don't know. Maybe that's not a problem.
Yeah, I'm going to elect not to think about it and just do it when I feel like it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I fear that it will become not doable. Like, I don't know if Baldesian Arsenal or whatever in Eureka is still doable or what, because it's necessary.
And there's some mounts and things available through that, so people are going to keep doing it.
But I'm talking about the higher relic stuff, because I mean, mount farmers are not necessarily the most populous group, because it's not guaranteed you're going to get anything, and there's a lot of work involved.
And it's also a one and done. Once you got it, you don't ever have to do it again.
Yeah. Whereas you'll have to repeat a lot of the grinds for relic weapons, although there are one-time grinds in the Shadowbringer's relic weapon chain that you only need to do once, which is a mercy because of the sheer amount of raid fights you have to do. So you have to do something like 20 Edens, 20 Alexanders, 20 Omegas, that sort of thing.
Kind of nuts.
Good gravy. So yeah, not a whole lot on the Final Fantasy front. Happen to have the stuff to get my armor smith up, so slowly working on my trade skills, just going through about one a week-ish. Sometimes not that, but I've got 4 or 5 of them. Now I've got 5 or 6 of them maxed out, I think. So I'll get there eventually.
I was going to do that, but the last time I tried, I literally started to fall asleep. That's just how tired I am, is that if I do something that is as low level engagement on the level of grinding crafting stuff, I actually can't stay awake.
Yeah. So part of the boon I have doing it is I did that big trust romp, and that meant that I had a ton of desynth materials from those levels 70 to 90 dungeons just laying around, and I could, for my armor smith, I could do them basically for free, just doing the collectibles with only having to go out and get a few pieces of lumber. So that was nice. What else? I'll get into the single player little bit I did this week after this next part, I guess. There's a certain movie that came out that I didn't think was particularly good, and Vol seems to think I mentioned it a lot. I thought I only mentioned it like 3 times, including the one time I told him the day I watched it, and once to Fern and once to Ibu when we were talking about stuff we did this week. But I guess Vol was just...
No, you mentioned it 2 or 3 times to me, in fact. I think you must have forgotten that you told me in Discord, and then you on Discord chat, and then you told me again on voice.
Oh, yeah, that's probably something that I did. But yeah, I was not too impressed by the Solomon movie.
Yeah, there's not really much else to say about it. Like, honestly, I don't think that the source material is just suitable for animation, period.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of that stuff is better presented as it's like the conundrum we had when we were talking about how they're going to animate the Shiro versus Kotomine fight.
Yeah. It's loaded with everything that has happened previously.
Yeah. So it does a whole lot of service to itself by stopping and really having the text go out and scroll through what all's been going on and recapping everything that's going on and the impact that's had on everybody and the final conclusions they've come to at the end of the story. You don't get that in an animated format. I
feel like you're able to get away with it in a sense with the visual novel, not just because it's a visual novel, you can stop and put as much writing in as possible, but that actually sort of makes sense in context because at that point in the story, Shiro is basically stroking out, and you can with a bit of hand waving say, oh well, time is appearing to dilate here because his mind is basically shutting down. So that there is no relationship between your reading time and what's actually happening IRL, so to speak. It's not actually a problem.
Yeah, and you're juicing out on command seals and FGO too, so that you could write that as a reason for why you're able to have so much text, and plus they have the cutaway sections with like faux and mash and all that. So you can play tricks with time to cram more stuff in there. But just a lot of that has to get cut, and they also have to try and translate the events that actually happened in what was a big in-game raid event that involved zillions of characters into something tangible. And unfortunately, this means they came up with what I thought was a really dumb compromise. With
I thought it was not so much a dumb one as an incomprehensible one. Like, why? Why exactly are you choosing this way? This doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah. And
you're playing pretty fast and loose with the lore here.
Yeah, so you have the protag can summon servants freely 7 times throughout the thing.
Well, not freely. He's using the Shiro trick.
Yeah, he can turn his nerves into magic circuits and burn them out to summon a servant.
But he doesn't have auto heal. That's the problem.
Yeah, he doesn't have Avalon stuffed in his chest, so he can't regen from it. So it's a hard limit of 7 times, and then it's just the Mystic Code keeping him going until he gets back. So yeah, that doesn't, it limits what they can show off. Instead of having a big just parade of servants, turning this into something that focuses on the protag himself, the only batches of servants we get are the ones that show up in the story to help with the pillars. And they highlight, most of them get at least one moment where they get to show up and do something.
Yeah, he didn't get to do anything but show up.
I think, yeah, some of them just got to show up. And then, but the thing that made me so mad about this system was the fact that he used one of his summons on Geronimo.
Yeah, like, of all people, like, why do you pick Geronimo? Why did you pick Sanson? Like, what? Why? I know that they took place. The reason is to do with of who appeared in the singularities, of course. But
Geronimo to fight Goetia, really?
Like, of all the servants, the one that is the most notorious for being poorly designed, other than possibly Phantom of the Opera, is also notorious for being poorly designed. But just, oh my goodness, why?
At least Dantes didn't get completely axed from the script. He showed up very briefly to carry Protag for about 20 seconds and then goes away.
Well, I mean, the sort of the bone that is being thrown to his fans there is that he was the last ditch, basically.
Yeah, he was the last one that he was able to whip out.
But it doesn't make any sense because it doesn't happen in the main continuity. That you have any interaction with him. That's why they had to later graft it back into the main continuity by making it a replayable sequence.
Yeah. They've I think they just made it free in Japan eventually too, because
they've done that, and they're moving in that direction as well. Once things have been around even longer as part of the ability to purchase the scenario to play, they'll just make them permanent because they've just made the story dependent on so many things. But yeah, it's I wanted to like it, but I think that it's just like they not only did they make some questionable decisions, but it's just not suitable material. I just don't think you can do it. I can't even imagine what it would look like because I tried when they announced that it was being made. I was excited, but I was only excited in my capacity as, oh well, I was going to be excited for regardless because it's more Fate content. But I could not, for the life of me, envision how it could ever be done. Like, it just didn't make sense, and their implementation of it was weak. And I can't think of a way in which it could have been anything but weak.
Yeah,
I feel like in a way that they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah,
there's not really much you can do because it was designed in a not quite but nearly gameplay first way. It's like, we want a really big, significant event to close out this chapter of the primary FGO story. What are we going to do? Well, we'll have this big multi-person raid event where everybody can participate, and there are tons of loot pinatas, and we've got to, kill a certain number of this constantly self-replicating enemy. And yeah, there was something that I really enjoyed about the experience of playing that live, like participating in the Solomon event live, because everybody online is talking about how things are going and the strategies that are coming up with to fight the tentacles, and everybody's doing it at the same time, watching the same numbers go down. It's the closest. It's the closest thing you can get to an MMO experience in FGO. And there was something special about that, but the scenario was designed to enable that. It was very much not designed to be a special story moment, a climactic story moment, and there is a climactic story moment in there, but the weight of the battle beforehand is built up extensively over the course of the event, rather than being basically something which sort of happens off screen.
Yeah, so it just it never could have the impact it did with the game just because of time investments. And we're just seeing something animated that we've already had a different and first time experience with. But it's hard to put my finger on just why so much of this thing rubbed me the wrong way. But another thing was some of the animation just looked really bad.
Yeah, well, I got the impression, generally speaking, when it was announced, the way in which it was announced, the timing it was announced, and the actual release date of it, it seemed to me like they were sort of rushing it out the door.
Yeah, there are some moments during the big fight with the pillars at the beginning of their invasion of the temple that just don't quite look right. The character movements look weird, and there's lots of very noticeable off-model shots everywhere, and it was really jarring in that bit. Not to mention the pillars look a little like they didn't have quite the time to quite get the pseudo 3D effect they were going for right.
Yeah, like there was oftentimes it was a case of I can see what you're trying to do, but you needed to work on this a bit more, I think.
Yeah.
But like the thing is that it was done by the same studio and the same team that did Babylonia, but Babylonia looked better, generally speaking. And you don't normally expect the series to be better than the movie in terms of production quality.
Yeah. I do not know what the dealio with that was, and what their budget was like, and what the kind of constraints were there, but it wasn't very good IMO.
No, for me, it's like I sort of mentally classify it as a serviceable animated capstone as a way of sort of nostalgically remembering the experience of playing it, rather than actually being the experience in and of itself. It's just a way of reminding me of what it was like back then.
Yeah, I would say unless you have an attachment to the original story and you just want to see that animated,
I don't think that you can get any kind of appreciation for the story through that movie. Like it's just a not quite fan service, because fan service would imply that it was a bit better than it actually was, but it is in the same sort of role as the Unlimited Blade Works movie, and that this is just a thing that is representative of something else rather than it actually being that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was disappointing in a sense, but it's still like, well, it does the job. And when it comes to telling a story, although there's gross pacing problems with Babylonia in a lot of ways, that anime I feel was just a lot better adaptation of FGO material. This one had a lot of the similar problems to Camelot, in that they just don't have a grasp on the conversion of the material as good as they need, adding to the fact that the actual raw material is just unsuitable for this type of treatment. It just made it a lot worse. So yeah, not great. But I think that there are other stories that I think that could be done better than Solomon was, and I'm sort of a bit disappointed that they aren't giving it the full treatment of going through those. Like recently, I read what one was it? The Tura Rialta's version of Okeanos, and it's an incredibly told story. Like, it's so much better than the way it was presented in the mobile game. It's the manga version, the official manga. It's really, really, really good compared to the original material. And I know the original material is no great shakes, so it's sort of it's a bit of an iffy comparison to make. But
faint praise there almost.
Yeah, it's almost faint praise. But I actually I enjoyed it, and I sort of had that experience a little bit of being excited to turn the page to see what would happen. Which is something that you just don't get with the original material. The original material is sort of waiting for it to end so you can move on to the next chapter, because you know the good one is actually Camelot.
Yeah, a lot of the early chapters in FGO especially hadn't figured out how they wanted to weave the narrative into and just go full retard with it, for lack of a better word, instead of trying to mishmash the way that mobile games were expected to play back in 2016 with storytelling. Now they've done it much better now with proper full boss fights, and most of your time in the story time is spent actual story time without having to go stop and kill skeletons or wyverns.
But yeah, the Tourist Realta retellings, there's no legitimate English one as far as I'm aware. Like, it's not been published in English, so you'll have to go to Bob's, to Honest Bob's manga store in order to read it. But it retells. I think it's got a retelling of the of Fuyuki, but it's primarily the stuff that has been translated into English is Orleans, which has, and then they skip over Septim entirely, without so much as a glance, and move straight on to Okeanos. And even Orleans is written really well, given the material. I'm heavily biased because Kiyohime becomes a permanent fixture in the party very, very early on in the story and continues to recur, and they don't leave her behind until the American Singularity, at which point she keeps booting Romani off the monitor so that she can talk to the Master instead. But there's a lot of character interaction that you don't really get to see so much of the little things that characters do when they interact with each other, like the scenes where they're camping and cooking and interacting, and that they're all played out quite a bit, and the character moments are quite well done, especially Marie Antoinette's are done really well, and she gets to have a really elaborate famous last stand sort of scenario in Orleans and so on. And the Okeanos chapter in particular stands out though, because the first arc of FGO makes a really big deal about Mash's encounter with Drake as part of her character development, part of her story, and that they really play that up a lot in Okeanos, and it's just you get a really good sense for the sort of person that Francis Drake is in the Type Moon universe, and the sort of like the way she plays everything fast and loose, and is basically in it for a bit of a lark as much as anything else. And they've got, like, you know, a really, really good interpretations of the way the Argonauts have stacked up against the protagonists, and the way it's all being manipulated from behind the scenes. It's a really great telling of the story. Like, if someone doesn't want to suffer through the mobile game and just wants story, it's a really, really superior telling of the story that you can just pick up and read. Really enjoyable. So a lot of that material can be told as a pure narrative, except it needs heavy overhauls to do it, because the mobile game material's just not built for it. That doesn't mean that there's no good core writing. People's deep fondness for the Camelot story in particular really speaks to the potential of those storylines, but you can't just shunt it into an animated format and expect it to work. It doesn't. It really falls apart on that sort of scrutiny.
Yeah, yeah. It needs a lot of work, especially before Camelot. Camelot is the last time when they really didn't have their feet under them, figuring out how to turn this story into a mobile game story while still keeping it an actual story. There's a lot of awkwardness with the singularities before Camelot, and even some in Camelot, although they get their feet under them pretty quick after that. And most things, Camelot and after, you could probably take that and run with it pretty close and turn it into something, but you can't just do what the Camelot movie did or the Solomon movie did.
I've often thought that you could do really, really good, like 12, 13 episode cores of, say, Shinjuku or Salem. Like, I think that they would just work really, really well.
Yeah.
As shorter anime stories. I think that they're uniquely suited to that, and especially Salem and Shinjuku have their own unique sort of mood to them that's different to most of the other content in that setting, which is sort of like absurd type moon historical fantasy type thing, whereas Salem is a horror story. It's basically a psychological horror story that's playing out in the foreground there, and Shinjuku is sort of like it's because it's set in modern urban setting. It's different to most of the other FGO stuff as well. I feel like those two would work quite well. And although there's a lot of sort of hand wavy type moon lore explanations required in order to make Shinjuku tick, but there's a lot of set pieces and scenes in that, like the confrontation with Hessian Lobo and that sort of thing, where you've got the makings of sort of like you can do a road chase, highway chase scene with that, and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah,
there's a lot
loves their highways.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for interpretation there. I think that those ones are really, really suitable for an animated treatment. So I hope with the fact that, that a lot of this earlier material that they've adapted has kind of flopped in adaptation, I hope that doesn't discourage them from doing other things. Like, as far as the longer form things go, I think that that Anastasia's chapter would also work quite well.
Yeah, most of the Lost Belts so far would, but Anastasia unfortunately has the baggage of being the first Lost Belt and having to explain everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's the problem there. I think you can cut a lot of that in an anime though. Like you would just have to you would have to pile a lot of it into like Fate Zero Episode 1, where you've got everybody walking in a circle around in a church.
You could do it if you had like Episode 0 was a special of like the introductory prelude stuff.
Yeah, you could do that. And they did that for Unlimited Blade Works the second time round.
Yeah.
Where they had an Episode 0 which just basically laid the groundwork from Rin's point of view, the way that they did it in the visual novel. So I think you could do that. I don't think you could do Sin, because too much of it is built on implicit knowledge. Like you need to understand a lot about a cultural rift that is more felt than told.
Yeah,
and it's just not the. I think again, it's not the right type of story for animation. It's not one of the stronger Lost Belts, that's for sure. But I think it's also the wrong sort of story to tell in an anime.
Yeah, you could get away with Yuga Krishna pretty easy.
Yeah, because it's very, very action heavy and basically has a Dragon Ball Z fight at the end, so where everybody transforms and roars. But yeah, it's. I think that one would work quite well. There's a lot of room in there.
I haven't played Atlantis and Olympus ain't out yet, so
it's more of a slow burn story so far. I haven't played very much of it, but again, it's sort of running. It's running into a lot of problems that there's a lot of previously understood material, because the people from the inside of the story see this as their grand. They think that this is going to be the final fight going into it. The people from New Chaldea, they think that they're going into the final confrontation, and so they spend a lot of time talking and preparing accordingly. Of course, nothing goes as planned. Everything falls apart and not in record time. But yeah, it's not. I don't know how it will play out. It's a very long-winded story so far. Things happen quite slowly. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how well it would work as yet. But I do hope to see some of this stuff animated. I just think that they've made some poor decisions. Like I feel like you choose Temple of Time to animate for marketing reasons and not because it's a good idea. It's because it's this is a sort of like an apex point of the story, and so it's a big event to animate it, even if it turns out crap. As a marketing event, it's still powerful.
If FGO was a long runner, even though it doesn't really fit to make it a long runner, but if you had each singularity be a season, and regardless of how good or bad that was, it would make sense to do a movie for Solomon, maybe. And
then it would sort of be slotting into that that like long runner shonen movie where nobody really expects very much. They just are happy to get a big fight.
Yeah.
But I wish that was what they were doing. Like they would just rewrite all of the singularities based around the same general narrative and themes and characters, and then just assemble an anime season for each one, and then just animate them all. That way we could just do away with the mobile game, because I'm only there for the story to begin with.
Yeah, I only come back when there's new main story content to do. And I've pretty much decided until these two-parters happen, whenever they happen, I probably won't come back to play the current part until it's close to or the next part's already out.
They've had a couple of like sub stories like Seraph and Oku that are sort of necessary as well.
Yeah.
So,
I'll keep an eye out for when those roll around, but
like,
I'm not there to grind up servants.
yeah, well,
I'm there
you don't
just to
need
see
to
the story.
anymore because your luck on the gacha is so legendary. You've probably got a killer team that you won't ever need to replace at this point.
Yeah,
So,
and when in doubt, Dante, Scotty.
yeah, but yeah. So I gather the second part is of Atlantis is coming out. Olympus is the second part. I believe it's coming out in February or early March. I barely scratched the surface of Atlantis so far.
I think I looked it up and it was early April, actually.
Oh. Well, that would give me time to get caught up if that's the case. But yeah, following Olympus, there's like this big gap where people complain there wasn't enough content, and then there's Heian-kyo, which is like Oku, and that it's a story that fills a gap. And then there's Avalon LaFay, which is like not a two-parter. It's just a big single self-contained chapter, and brutally difficult. And not although I've heard that it's not as brutally difficult as Olympus, which a lot of people have reported as just unfair sometimes. It's just straight out the battles are unfair, and you have to luck your way through some of them.
Yeah,
or use rainbow apples. But
yeah, it's
and then go on.
it was something about the difficulty. I got distracted halfway through it. While I was forming the sentence. But I've heard that Atlantis and what's the next one? Olympus ramp up in difficulty to truly insane degrees.
Yeah, I've heard
as a through line.
The final fight.
Do you what you've done of it? Has it been outlandishly hard yet?
I haven't done any bosses yet. Like I said, I've had no time because the seasonal events are still rolling in the background. So I get like a week where if I've got time, I'll do a couple chapters, and then I'm back to regular events again.
Oh, that would drive me nuts with stories.
Yeah, because the whatchamacallit, Amazon's backed directly onto Enmity without any gap. So I'd hoped that there would be a week's gap so I could do Atlantis, but that didn't happen. It's Amazon straight away.
We gotta move it on, guys.
All right.
Yep. So yeah, if you're attached to the movie or the series in the game, yeah, you can go watch it and see it animated, and it's okay, whatever. You're not going to get much from it.
It's absolutely not worth time in isolation.
Yeah, by itself, not worth. All right. Okay, so that's about all we have for the stuff we did together. I'll save the bits I poked at games this week for next week, since Fern's got to run, and we still got news on an email to go through.
Yep. So what's the email doing?
It's sitting in the show host board. That's what it's doing.
I can't find the show host board.
Professionalism.
Actually, I can't read that. The text is too blurry. I'm going to read it from the email box. Dear No Excuses, I'm Serathis. Thanks for not reading out my real name on the emails, unlike Natural 20. Remember 2040? Has he actually put his real name on the emails? Oh, yes, that was at the top.
Yeah.
I guess I don't consider that to be part of the email, so I never read it out. But yes, I remember Natural 20, and I remember not liking his show because it was him reading out a talent tree, and then I never consumed any more of his content.
Yeah, I remember TV used to read real names too, occasionally.
Yeah, if it was there, he'd read that.
But yeah, and you may know me from such emails as, check out this Doom map set I found, and hey, look at this Doom total conversion mod I played, and here is this Doom gameplay mod that none of you will play, nonetheless it's awesome. Well, I also happen to be the type of gamer who still plays milsims, such as the 2 kilometers of march in the modding framework known as Arma 3 on a PvE mission, playing the most generic FPS ever, Squad. And just now I have bought Sukablat. Isn't that something really unsavory?
That is dirty words in Russian, yes.
From Tarkovgrad. The #1 tactical try-hard gun modding battle royale effery out on the market, where you can swap out just about everything on a gun, down to the barrel and receiver, only to lose it the last second during extraction when someone snipes you in the head, and everything else you may have gathered that run. The game has quite a barrier to entry. There is no tutorial of any kind. Not even loading screen tips, knowing in advance that when playing as a scav, I shouldn't shoot other scavs. Or the simple fact that the lootable containers look almost the same as the generic scenery containers. You pretty much need a second monitor or a phone to look at the map so you can actually find the extraction points, and of course there are hardcore players who are walking tanks and heavy armor and night vision equipment. That's life in post-Soviet Tarkovgrad, where just trying to grab a loaf of bread will get you shot while trying to cross the street. Because yeah, you need to chug bottles of water and cans of beans every 15 minutes while on a mission, cause reasons. I have also bought Untitled, a fairly alright contender in the top-down view Metroidvania genre, where unnecessarily human-looking lesbian robots of colour are being oppressed by humans.
I'm sorry,
There is also a time limit. There is also a time limit because the robots are running out of juice and you won't find enough dust to keep everyone ticking. You can, however, disable this timer if you don't like being rushed. The game is actually fairly competent from every standpoint, even though it's pixel graphics. However, Hollow Knight spoilt me way too much. Code, Team Cherry, code! And I had way too much woke vibes coming from Unsighted for me not to refund. Also, I have just one question about the FF14 raid. What is a man? Serathis. P.S. I did find a few really neat map sets for Doom. Maybe I'll tell you about it next week.
Yeah. It's on the to-do list to check out some stuff that Serathis does with Doom eventually.
Eventually.
There are a lot of them that I just don't have that much interest in. Some of the ones that are really out there, I've tinkered with. But if they want me to play it, they need to have a fully fledged Type Moon total conversion. I'm sorry. This is my entry level criterion.
So, Escape from Tarkov. Filthy words from Tarkov, I guess. I've got some friends who've played it and they got right into it, but I honestly took one look at it and I can't see any appeal in it whatsoever.
It sounds like the opposite of the type of game I like to play.
It really does, doesn't it? So, yeah, it's just shooters. And yeah, okay, you can mod your guns and you can do really crazy things with the gun modding, but
I'm afraid that my idea of a great fun FPS to play is Time Splitters. So
Time Splitters was great. Yeah, like I said last week, I prefer my my FPSs on the sillier side. I like Doom and because it's just big and loud and ridiculous, and I like Quake because it's also brown and ridiculous. But yeah, it's something fun and silly.
Yeah, I'm very odd about my shooters in that I don't actually care too much about their presentation. I mostly care how they feel. Yeah. So I'll play like Halo 3 or Doom 2016 as two shooters that come to mind for shooters I just really, really like to play because I think they feel good.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, on that count, for me, it's UT2K4 or go home.
Yeah.
Like nothing has come close for me since. It's just that was where FPS evolution in the genre that I enjoyed peaked.
Like I don't mind a little bit of Halo, but Halo is about as vanilla as I'm willing to go.
I don't like Halo. I always feel like I'm wading through treacle.
Well, yeah, there's that. It's not the best, and honestly, I think Halo gets a lot more credit than it actually deserves. But it's okay.
I also don't really like how the multiplayer plays out in Halo. Like it's always like, oh, well, I want to control this weapon point, and I just don't. I don't really like that sort of non-fluid combat style. Like I prefer the constantly swirling melee that you get in UT2K4.
Yeah, there's an element of map control, unless you're playing Halo 4 or 5, at which point the weapon spawns are random.
have fun with that.
It's not like UT2K4 didn't have map control, but the map control was much more fluid because if you tried to control one area for any great length of time, you'd get your ship pushed in. It was simple as that. There was too many ways to be approached in an inconvenient manner, and not every weapon was a bullet hose. And someone who was a bit handy with a translocator, who saw you not paying attention for a split second, could cause you to evaporate instantaneously. So you could not just depend on the movement capabilities of others to be sufficiently low that you can always control a point. So you always had to sort of like probabilistically place yourself in advantageous situations rather than absolutely marry yourself to the battle rifle.
I played a little bit of UT. I'm not sure which ones I played, because I never played any of them for too terribly long. But I remember liking what I did play, but I just didn't have any friends that played them, so I didn't stick around and keep playing.
That's the biggest thing about these shows. You really need to know people to get the most out of them.
Yep. And let's see, what else is in the email?
Team Cherry needs to hurry up.
Yeah, Team Cherry does need to hurry up. Holy crap. The two things I skipped and I might go into next week are Metroid Dread. I've finally finished. And I'm not going to go into it now, but it's took many months. And the whole time I was thinking, hurry up, Team Cherry.
Yeah.
Please. And then the other one's Grime, which I'll save for later because it's an indie game and has more to talk about.
All right.
So I'll have more to say on that particular subgenre when we get to it, probably next week. If I can remember.
I just looked at the uncited Steam page.
Oh no.
And I would like to refer you to the second entry on their review quotes for something that just made me want to slap the person who wrote it.
Kindly read it. Do I want to hear it? Oh no,
it's just like this is what a game critique has devolved into.
Wrapped around a devilish premise. That one?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's Metroidvania and Souls. Because those are the only two things you can use to describe a game anymore. And it's both of them.
We take the two subgenre names that for some ungodly reason adopted the names of the codifiers for them and making them completely useless as the genre evolves.
Yeah, that and roguelike is the third.
Yeah, well, now we have roguelite to make it even more confusing.
Yeah, which means even less. Anywho. So, Unsighted, eh? Unsighted. I'm stuck in the Kobold tunnel. Give me a second here to have a look-see. I don't mind the idea of a top-down roguelike. That sounds... Well, not a roguelike, rather a Metroidvania. Sounds interesting.
I mean, it looks like Hyper Light Drifter. In fact, it looks exactly like Hyper Light Drifter. Is it made by the same people? Doesn't look like it. Or was that the publisher I clicked on?
Possibly.
The studio's only made this game that's on Steam.
Yeah, it looks... The art style looks exactly like Hyper Light Drifter.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
The movement looks exactly like Hyper Light Drifter.
It does look like Hyper Light Drifter.
The devs just play Hyper Light Drifter and decide to make a video game like that, but with black lesbian robots?
I guess?
Yeah, they're basically carbon copies.
I mean, Hyper Light Drifter is a great game if you want to go play a game.
No, actually, I think that as far as sort of like design flair is concerned, Hyper Light Drifter looks better. Like it looks like their artistic decisions are purposeful, whereas the ones in Unsighted don't look purposeful. They look like they're just trying to adopt a style.
Yeah, Hyper Light Drifter also has no wokeness or message to push. It's just a fantasy after the end scenario, trying to put the world back together.
What is the point of a robot of color anyway? It's just a paint job for a robot, isn't it?
Get a new one.
Yeah, it's like you feel oppressed because the tone of your paint is a little bit too dark.
Hang on, let me bust out the spray can, put on some white robo face.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Let's get right away from that, shall we?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, this is Serathus baiting us, basically.
Oh yeah, I know. But thanks for that, Serathus. Yeah.
Great bait, mate.
I know we're going to continue to disappoint you with our taste in shooters. You know what I want to play? Hexen.
But the only thing that happens in Hexen is that you play for a while and then you get lost in the same place you always get lost in, and then you give up.
Yeah, then turn an orc to stone and push it down the stairs, and so
Too hard.
Yeah.
The news.
So yeah, thank you for the email, Sarah. Now we have some good news. Well, we have one good news.
The only good news of note.
The big news, and that is that Activision Blizzard is being bought out by Mike Snoofed.
So yeah, this deal has been in the works for a while. We'd heard rumblings about it before, but it looks like it's actually going through now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that Blizz Activision was basically controls a large number of properties that are not signed to a major platform. Yep. So they were inevitably going to get snapped up by the first person who could raise the capital, and in that game, the only people with a platform and the capital were Microsoft. Because I mean, the reality is that the alternative was being bought out by Tencent.
Yeah, or some third party that's only just entering the market and has no idea what they.
This rings to me like the modern version of Microsoft buying out Rare.
A bit.
If it was just Blizzard, I would agree with you. But Blizzard Activision King is a different beast. It's not just a stable of a handful of particular IPs the way Rare was. This is something much larger because it gives them control over Call of Duty.
Yeah, so they've said they're going to honor their previous contracts with Call of Duty and stuff.
Yeah, but what happens when the contracts expire?
Yeah, they didn't mention what happens when there's no valid contract anymore.
We know what happens because Bethesda.
So,
yeah.
Had this thing happened a couple of years ago, I probably would have been against it. Honestly, now, I don't think they could make anything worse.
Well, I mean, the thing is that ABK's got issues. It has issues and it needs to solve them pronto.
It has giant, huge, stonking shoes.
And just clubbing the problem with a sledgehammer like this is probably sort of like the kickstart that they need to start changing things up.
Yeah. So let's answer the obvious question here. What's going to happen to Bobby? Bobby go bye-bye.
Well, he'll be off ski. There's too much. He's not going to want hanging over him the idea that he was removed a disgrace.
Yes, so
he's going to want to try and leave with a little bit of dignity intact.
Not to mention an enormous golden parachute.
Well, he has to forfeit some of it, doesn't he?
He forfeited the golden parachute that was in contract in favour of selling his stake in ActiBliz.
Well, that's not him. That's not a golden parachute. Then that's just liquidating assets.
Yeah,
and he may not have even wanted to do that. So to him, he might view it as a penalty of sorts.
It was either that or
have somewhere else to put that investment.
Yeah, it was probably either that or just go out the door with nothing.
I mean, it's hard for us little people to envision the way in which $400 million liquid cash is nothing or a penalty, but for someone who moves in his circles, being forced to liquidate at a time he wouldn't have otherwise liquidated could make him very, very unhappy.
I would very much like someone to give me $400 million to go away. But
yeah, I would take $400 million to do whatever you want, just about.
Just about.
In the world where you are partway through and you're partway through your investment strategy and your Death Star made of money is not yet fully operational. Suddenly not being able to move the money around for the construction of your Death Star made of money is very inconvenient because you are not quite ready to blow up the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, so that's how it's going to go. Bobby is confirmed to be Offski, which means the whole Acti Blizzard will be coming under the purview of Phil Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fanboy of him, but he's at least not an idiot most of the time. The things that he says are terrifying a lot of the time because he's still a suit.
Yes.
And he thinks the way a suit does.
I think he's got some very good handlers.
Yeah, I think he needs better handlers.
Yeah.
I think because there's certain things that should not escape the confines of the inside of your skull.
Yeah.
But
the handlers just need to learn to smack his hands away from Twitter as well.
But when it comes to you have to put a suit in charge of your gaming division, there are worse people.
Yeah, like over the last few years, particularly since kind of the absolute trouncing that they've gotten in the console wars over the last few years, Microsoft has been doing pretty good. They don't have to be perfect, but it's been a kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation.
Also, if the person on the other side of the scales is Bobby, it's hard not to look like a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Phil Spencer hasn't done anything really to distinguish himself in my mind, but he hasn't really stepped in it that bad.
Well, it's because he's a preside over a recovery leader who has chosen a different strategy to TV spirits, and that strategy is the turning everything into a live service platform approach, which because in the current day it has generated a lot of value for the customer, is generally being viewed as a good thing. Like, I don't have a great deal of faith that this will persist because people would pay more for what the Game Pass offers. It's as simple as that. People would pay more.
People would be very willing to. If they put up the price a bit, there would not be much in the way.
I think there would be complaints. Everybody would talk about them being money grubbing and they're just profiteering. All of the usual whinging would happen, but I don't think people would unsub. That's the important thing.
That's the important thing. Yes. So
yeah, it's
so far beyond the commitment to maintain Call of Duty on Sony platforms, we don't know what they're going to be doing with the rest of Blizzard's franchises.
So. Yeah, if they're smart, they need to let these franchises take a rest.
I don't know if you need to. I don't know if they necessarily need to take a rest, because I think that unless you're planning to rebuild the entire game from scratch, something like World of Warcraft can't afford to take a rest because they can't afford to lose the little momentum they have left. What they need a renaissance, but they need a plan more than that.
Yeah, they need someone competent with an idea at the helm.
Yeah, they need what Blizzard as a company needs is like a Soviet era purge. Yeah. Like if everyone who is part of the current outmoded way of thinking, where everything revolves around doing what they're told and not thinking for themselves and just chasing monthly active users at the expense of everything else, just trying to squeeze a little bit more money out of the whales, like that has reached the end of its lifespan, and everybody who continues to promote that, gulag.
To that
they
end,
go to the gulag.
Yeah, to that end, Elder Scrolls Online, when it fell into the hands of Microsoft, before that it fell into Microsoft's hands, it was a very money-hungry game. Apparently, according to people who play it, things have improved a bit. And Elder Scrolls Online was nowhere near as bad as WoW. In terms of, basically everything.
Importantly, there are still people in the world who like it. And the same is not true for WoW.
There are people who are playing it under obligation now. WoW.
Yeah, most of the people who continue to play World of Warcraft play World of Warcraft because they can't imagine a world in which they don't any longer. Because they've done it for so long.
Habit, sunk cost fallacy, it's because their friends are still there. Whatever the reason.
But I don't think they need to rest. I don't think they need to necessarily rest their franchises. I think they need to go back to basics.
Yes.
Work out what was successful that they did and then do that. As opposed to whatever silly ideas they're currently pushing. Like, there is a big vacuum in the RTS space right now.
Mm-hmm. People actually
there's a reason why everybody's still playing StarCraft 1 because it's better. And it was made in a bygone era.
Yeah, by and large, people in the RTS circles have been extremely positive for this. The other big RTS, of the big three RTSs, I suppose, which is Age of Empires, has done very well in Age of Empires 4. Like, it's not perfect, but it is still a very good game. And people are hoping that the StarCraft will get the same treatment. It's too late for Command & Conquer.
I think the important thing is they didn't hack anybody off because they did right by the AoE 2 fans, and the AoE 2 fans are the core of the AoE fandom.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to change no matter what games they release subsequently, unless they release AoE 2.2 and AoE, which is just AoE 2 except everything is tighter and somehow it miraculously works on even more computers.
They've kind of already done that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's part of what I mean when I say they've done right by that player base, because they're the people that have kept AoE being a thing.
Yes,
it's not anything that the suits have done or that their new development divisions have done that have kept AoE important. AoE is important because the same people who always loved it continue to love it and form a sort of a base of support, and that's what keeps that running. And the big difference between the team doing that and Blizzard is that Blizzard has never acknowledged that they have a base that they need to maintain.
Yeah.
But in their minds, they just have to maintain whales because they make money. The people who keep playing AoE 2, they aren't profitable, but they keep AoE 2 being a thing, which is its own type of profit. Like, people will buy another AoE game because AoE 2 is still a thing. So that will make money. That'll make money down the line. But in the cases like World of Warcraft, people will not buy another World of Warcraft game because the way in which World of Warcraft is a thing is not the thing that it was. It is a totally different thing. It is basically a mobile game. Everything about it follows mobile game logic.
Yes. Which leads on to the next thing, is this actually gives Microsoft the entry into the mobile market that they to that end, I expect that Diablo Immortal will still happen.
I hope that Microsoft will send it back to the bench to be made into a decent game, because the way things are going in there, I expect that it's probably not at this stage. I expect it's a lazy cash grab.
Yeah, well, it looked like a lazy cash grab when they first announced it. Because that's exactly what it was. So I'm hoping, and this is best case scenario, is that Microsoft does actually make it a proper thing in its own right.
Yeah, and it really does need to be something that is different to Diablo proper. It needs to be its own type of thing that uses the advantages of the platform rather than merely exploiting the format. I don't know what form that would take, but they need to come up with something a bit more cohesive than just, oh, well, we can squeeze money out of a different audience in this format.
Oh, yeah. Right, so what do you think we're going to see? Well, I think Microsoft's going to do the same thing that they did with Bethesda. All that back catalogue is going to wind up on Game Pass.
Well, I think that before that they need to put everybody in the Crucible.
Oh yeah. Behind the scenes, that's exactly what I think is going to happen.
I'm talking radical reorganization of both personnel and goals, short term and long term, because they clearly can't take care of themselves.
Pick the whole company up and just give it a really good shake. But yeah, hopefully we'll see most of the Blizzard back catalogue on Game Pass, if possible.
Lost Vikings.
I wouldn't say no to Lost Vikings, but I don't think that'll happen. But hopefully, Warcraft 3 vanilla.
Next gen AAA Lost Vikings.
Why do you say such filthy words?
And all the dwarfs are now fat black women dwarfs.
App.
You know it's gonna happen.
App. Yeah. I'd love to see them dig Warcraft 3 out, but I don't think that's going to happen. From what I understand, the original source code is gone for that.
Yeah, and Warcraft 3 just had Reforged. That's not gonna...
Yeah, refunded.
Refunded. Reforged was such an enormous dumpster fire that I wouldn't blame them if they just say, you know what? No.
You know, you gotta think, at some point, when you've got a game as bad as Reforged, it would be easier on your company's reputation if you just told your bosses, this is so bad that if we release this, the company is going to explode.
Yeah.
Just tell the fans we goofed.
Incidentally, there's a fan who's going through Warcraft 3 Reforged and doing it properly on his own.
And on that note, I mean, maybe it's just that the person who gets to push.
Oh. Lose you again? Pickle? Not again. Discord, why you do this? Let's see if I can seem to behave itself again. This is bad. This is bad.
If this is some weird translation just between his headset and that, they could totally maybe still hear us too.
Oh no, Discord wasn't even lighting up. If that was the case, then that may have been what was happening, but it's working now. Discord is just being extremely strange today. Way. Also, I got dead because of that.
It happens.
Yeah. Where were we?
I don't remember.
What things are we expecting to see precipitate from this arrangement?
Yeah, all right.
It's. I'm hesitant to play Tea Leaf Reader for stuff in the future because after 2020, anything is possible.
Yeah.
Well, also, I feel like the entities involved are so large that it's sort of hard to say what they'll do.
They have so many options they could do, and on both the stupid and the smart end.
Yeah, I think that the key thing will be the reorganization. Like, how are you going to do this? Like, are you going to give more autonomy to individual teams so that they aren't completely dependent on getting orders from above and that sort of thing? Like, how are they going to leverage Hearthstone, which is still coining money somehow? That sort of thing. Like, there's so much fallow ground there. People love the StarCraft universe, and what is it doing? What have they done with StarCraft lately?
Yeah, nothing.
Like, these IPs are so powerful, they can't just be left there not doing anything, and they're going to. Microsoft are going to want money for their investment. They want money out for that colossal sum that they put in. And they're not going to get it out of. They're not going to get it out of extant World of Warcraft. That's for sure.
No. You know what I think they could do is if they take the Blizzard label, dust it off, clean it up, and make that kind of their premium line game studio.
Well, I don't know. It's got very strong associations already, and I don't know if you want to tamper with that. What you want, you do want to revive it though. So
yes.
What you need to do is stage a return to form of sorts.
Yes. And that makes that kind of the big thing. Like a return to quality, less games, but really high quality games. That was what Blizzard was famous for before.
Yeah, and I am afraid that you're going to have to carry out some public executions in order to make that happen.
Yes. Big, messy ones.
You've got to basically just take what you gained in terms of IP and rights with this thing and just flush everybody involved on the Blizzard end.
And actually, with that, we're also just on time, too.
Yeah, you got to run away, don't you?
I got to run away.
So, yeah, there's a whole lot of interesting things I think we'll be seeing in the news that follow through this.
I think we'll find out a lot more over the next couple of weeks.
It will be.
Yeah, it's like a year out, but
Yeah, we might not hear anything. They may, in fact, just go silent for 6 months while everything goes through its turmoil.
It wouldn't be surprising. Yeah. A lot of company mergers kind of do that.
Especially with, I guess, with Blizzard in the precarious situation it's in legally. With the state of California. Yeah, Microsoft may tell them just to shut up.
Yeah, the last thing you want is somebody opening their big fat gob and ruining everything.
Like how Bobby did and made it worse every time.
It's kind of what he did.
I do want to almost believe the crackpot conspiracy theory that Microsoft sent in agents to get hired by Blizzard that then tanked the value of the company on purpose so that Microsoft could buy them out.
Honestly, because word is that Microsoft has been kind of around for quite some time, at least a year, I think they just saw the writing on the wall and just sat back and watched and waited. That's all they had to do.
They just needed to wait for them to fall far enough that was too hard to pass up, that you couldn't defend not selling to the investors any longer.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone could kind of see this coming, but yeah, okay, nobody kind of really expected it to implode to such the degree that it did. Yeah, something was going to happen.
I just like thinking about what if the reason this made it through to the California legal system as well as deep and got the media exposure it did. What if Microsoft greased a few palms, shook a few hands, passed a few Benjamins under the table?
Well, the thing is that we know it was the feds that were infiltrating.
It's called business.
It wasn't Microsoft, it was the feds.
That's true. Well, I mean, Microsoft's Microsoft. Who's to say they don't have influence with the feds either? So yeah, my crazy ideas aside.
Yeah, I think
we'll see.
Yeah, by and large, I think this will be a good thing.
I am not leaning one way or the other. Yeah. I think this could just as easily turn out to be a terrible disaster.
It could, but honestly, it was a terrible disaster before. So how much worse could it get?
Yeah, they're at the point where they're dead in the water. They basically there's no way to salvage them from their current position with their current position, and there's no will to do so either. So surgically removing the current will and replacing it with another one is going to perturb the situation somewhat, and from dead in the water, at least they'll spasm a bit before they die again.
Yeah. And with that, let's get out of here.
All right, folks. Email topic of the week. Tell us what you think of the Blizzacti buyout.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Closing comments, go.
Don't want to go to work, but I gotta.
Adulting does suck. It's
it does.
Quite awful, generally speaking.
Yeah, all right, folks. I don't have anything. I'm just dead. I don't want to go back to work either. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Sayonara, bye-bye.